Welcome to Austringer Creations. Today we're going to go over the proper procedure recommended by Glock on breaking down field stripping, cleaning, oiling, and reassembling your Glock pistol. Come join us. Okay, work on, this is a Glock model 22, but the majority of Glock models are the same pretty much, and the procedures that you break them down to clean them, they're all pretty much the same. There's very few differences. Alright, first and most important, anytime you're dealing with a firearm, no matter whether you're cleaning or going to shoot or what have you, first thing you do, make sure that it is not loaded. But we want to check the chamber. Nothing in the chamber, both visually and physically. Look in there and feel. Nothing in the chamber. No magazine in the magazine well. So, point in a safe direction. Drop the striker. Now, to break a Glock down, it's a little bit different from a 1911 or some of the other models. Place your thumb at the base of the rear of the frame underneath the beaver tail to the slide. Put your finger across the top of the slide and squeeze until you get the slide back about 1/8 of an inch or so. Then you want to slide the clip down and let the magazine or the slide advance to the front of the frame. Pull the recoil spring assembly out. Pull the barrel out of the slide. There is a Glock broken down for cleaning. This is as far as you need to go to clean your Glock. Now, as an armorer, I can go quite a bit farther. I can get into the trigger bar, the trigger assembly, the safeties, the striker release. I can get into the slide, get into the hammered, the firing pin safety, the firing pin itself, but that is going to be outside the scope of this video. I'm not going to go into that at this. I may do it at a later video, but I don't like breaking the guns down very often, and to be honest with you, I believe I did a detail inspection the last time I cleaned it, and it has not been shot probably 300 or 400 rounds since the last detail, so it's not enough in my eyes. First, we'll do an inspection. There's no obvious wear on the barrel. Take your barrel and slide it into the slide, and what we're looking for is make sure there's no bulge in the barrel. If you ever shoot reloads, and I obviously reload my own, if you ever get hot loads, you can overpressure the barrel and it will cause a bulge, and if there is a bulge, then sliding it into the opening on the slide will reveal that. If you get to a point that it gets tight, then that barrel is to be retired. If you ever get a bulge in it, do not fire it again. Alright, wipe it down. I've already wiped the barrel down. like the slide, make sure you get the heaviest material off. And this doesn't look like it's been fired as much as it actually has. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not any dirtier than it is. Okay. Alright. Let's get a Q-tip. And I'm old school. There are many products out. A lot of new products that people swear by, the latest and greatest. And I've tried several. And to be honest with you, I've not found anything that I think is hands down better than good old Hops number 9. And that's what I've used for years. And I suppose that's what I'll continue to use until something really impresses me enough to change. You don't need a whole lot of solvent. The more solvent you put on, the more you have to take off, because solvent will, if you leave any solvent on, it will attack any oil that you put on here, break it down, and kill its effectiveness. And since we're not going to put very much oil at all when we reassemble, you don't want any more solvent than you absolutely need. I put a little in the chamber and down in the barrel to let it soak and sit for just a minute while I clean some of these others components. And when you clean the slide, concentrate on the rails, and when you get to the area around the firing pin, the striker, since we're not going to pull it out and clean inside it, you want to make sure you keep your solvent from going into the area around the striker, the firing pin, or the firing pin safety here. The Glock design has the firing pin inside a tube, a polymer tube, that if it gets any fluid, any liquid inside it, it can hydrolock and cause the firing pin from striking your ammunition and causing misfire. So you don't want to let your solvent run into the breech. You don't want it to go in around the firing pin safety or at the rear at the firing pin itself here. And on the frame, just look and see if you see where carbon is built up. There'll be areas right around here inside on the trigger bar and right above behind the trigger where carbon will deposit as the slide cycles to the rear after firing. The ash will drop down inside from the breech area and the chamber area, and it will also deposit back here around your cruciform safety and your trigger bar area. So again, just very little bit of solvent on the end of a Q-tip will be enough to clean these areas. Okay. Now once you have used solvent on there, you may have to take a brush to some areas that have a little heavier concentration. On the Glock, with as many components, polymer components, I don't use a metal brush, not even a brass or bronze. I use nylon. It'll clean just as well, and you won't take the chance of scratching up the components in the firearm. And again, you don't need a whole lot. You don't have to go overboard. The more solvent you put in here, the bigger mess you're going to get. Okay. Put a little more inside the barrel there to run the brush through. If you prefer bore snake, that's all well and good. Just make sure that when you use a brush that you don't stop the brush inside the barrel and change directions. Make sure that it comes all the way out. And it's best, and with a pistol it's really not that critical, but if you are cleaning rifles, especially precision rifles, long range rifles, hunting rifles, you want to make sure that you protect the crown, the muzzle at all costs. And I never run a brush through from the barrel. I always run it from the breech. And like I said, with a pistol, it's not as critical. You can pull it back. Just do not stop the brush inside the barrel and change directions. You can, at the very least, damage your brush, or if you're using metal brushes, and again, I use nylon, cleans just as well. That's basically fishing line is what makes up that brush, and it is not going to scratch up the inside of that barrel. Once I've run the brush through it, I'll take a clean patch, lay it across the breech, and then push it through with the brush. As it comes out the other side, you can see what it pulls out. Take another clean patch. And there we are. I'm satisfied with that. And the barrel is clean. Just wipe the outside of it down. Pay particular attention to the feed ramp and the lugs at the retaining lug. Make sure there's no damage. Make sure there's no buildup of material underneath it. On the front of the retaining lug, take your thumbnail and make sure that your thumbnail hangs. Make sure that you have the lip that is intact. Make sure it's not chipped or worn. If that wears, then the gun can come apart on you when you fire. And that would not be good eats. Set the barrel aside. Now the recoil spring assembly, there's really nothing to do. Just wipe it down. Do not oil it. I don't even put solvent on it. I just wipe it down. If there's any buildup inside it, I'll take my brush to get it off. But this looks pretty clean, so I just wipe it down, set it aside. Alright, now we've got everything clean, wiped down. It's time to oil it. Now the Glock needs very, very little oil. Basically, back here on the trigger bar, you need a single drop of oil. We'll put one drop there. And then I want to push forward on the trigger bar. The firing pin safety cam there. Push it forward, and as I do, you'll see that the cruciform safety and the rest of the bar slides forward and locks. You want to do that to take the pressure off the trigger safety, because you want to work this trigger several times to make sure that oil gets down into the assembly back there. Okay. Now, like I said, we're not going to oil the recoil spring guide rod assembly. We're going to put a single drop of oil on the barrel and rub it in with our hand. I'm going to take my oil rag and just wipe the excess off. Now there's still a very thin film of oil on that barrel. Now we've wiped down the slide. You want to make sure we don't get oil. Same thing, we didn't want to get solvent into the firing pin or striker cavity. We don't want to get oil in it either. And we don't want to get oil into the firing pin safety. And we do not want to get oil in the firing pin hole, the breech. But we do want to make sure that we put a small drop on the rail. Wipe the excess off, and then I'll hold it and let gravity run it down the inside of those rails. It won't take just a couple of seconds for that to happen. Alright. Now we put a drop of oil on the trigger bar back here. Next we want to put a single drop on the metal portion of the slide rails on the frame. Again, wipe off any excess that goes on the inside. Drop the barrel into the slide. Make sure it locks in place. The guide rod and recoil spring assembly. Install it. Make sure it latches onto the front of the barrel retention boss. And then slide it together. Work it several times to make sure that everything is working smoothly. No rattle means the firing pin is caught sufficiently. Once it's dropped, it should rattle. Hear the firing pin rattle inside the chambers. Now on the outside we'll put another single drop on the top of the frame slide, and again we'll rub that into the metal parts just like we did with the barrel. And since we do not want it to be wet, all we want is a very thin, very thin film. Just the only reason it's still there is because of the viscosity of the oil. So we'll wipe it down with our oil rag. And there is your Glock cleaned and reassembled. Like I said, there is no need to break it down any farther than that. If you're not an armorer, you could lose parts, reinstall. It's something as simple as the order that you put the pins, frame pins back in will make a difference. If you put them in the wrong order, you can cause damage. So if you're not an armorer, you've not been trained, you do not need to break it down any farther than we broke this down to clean it. Alright. Thank you for watching.